Hi, welcome to the Integratis Clinic. I'm Carrie Bartlett,
Hi, I'm Dr. Liz Corcoran.
and I wanted to have a chat with Liz today about something that's been on my mind,
Yeah.
but that we're also seeing a lot of, particularly in referrals that are coming into the
Yes.
clinic. And that is people with autism,
Hmm.
children and adults, who are experiencing sensory sensitivities
Yeah.
around food. Very common for our neurodiverse patients who are coming through the door. But I found myself having a lot of questions
Mm.
because, as you know, at the Integratis, our ethos and our focus is on the link between mental health and physical health. And we always strive to not separate the two.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just really curious if you could tell us a little bit more about sort of food sensitivities, particularly sensory,
Yeah.
and how that might impact on digestive health
Yeah.
and gut health in particular.
Yeah. So it's like a massive topic, isn't
Mm.
it? And, what does the research tell us is that people with autism and autism like, conditions can also, when they're young, maybe they don't have good communication skills. What we found is that a lot of them have got stomach cramps or pains after every meal they have. And you can imagine that, this young person with ASD who's in a classroom and they've had their lunch and what they've eaten has upset their stomach. Maybe they don't have the communication skills to be able to express that. So you see that coming out in behaviors.
Yeah.
So if we think a little bit about like how someone with autism interacts with food and is around food, just taking that alone, that food is causing them distress, that food is blocking their ability to learn, to take part in, school and those relationships at school every day. You can imagine what a huge stumbling block that's going to be. And
Mm.
that's just one example of what we understand from research. We also know that there's research where they've looked at people with autism and their siblings, and they've looked at their gut microbiome, and they can see that there's a different signature of those gut bugs between two people that live in the same house, which we'd expect it to look quite similar. So we know that there is some things going on around gut health in our autistic community. Now, we haven't totally unpacked the way that interacts with their brain health, the way that might be kind of influencing how they're doing, but you have touched on a big one is actually sensory issues. So, eating and being kind of enjoying your food and hunger and desire for certain kinds of foods, that's a brain activity. That's something that, requires your brain to tell you you love that food, you're drawn to that food. Or when you eat that food, that doesn't taste right, that tastes weird, or I struggle to chew and swallow those foods. That whole experience is conditioned, right? So if you have those experiences again and again and again, it can drive someone from a preference or from something which, maybe that they get an instant enjoyment out of, like say sugar, we're all guilty of. It can drive them towards more and more narrowed intake of types of food. Now, with our functional medicine lens, when we look at that, when we look at we're only limiting what we're eating and drinking to sort of one food type, often an ultra processed food type, what we're seeing is like over the days and years and, like as the time accrues, people aren't getting the breadth of micronutrients. So the vitamins and minerals that's in our food, they're beginning to sort of go into a more depleted state. And what we know about that is that can further drive us to have a preference for certain kinds of foods. So, like when we're low in zinc, and that's in like nuts and fruits and vegetables, when we're low in zinc, food begins to taste weird and begins to smell weird. So you can imagine our loved ones with autism, they begin to sort of avoid the very things that can get them like getting them eating and drinking. So when we see someone with autism comes to our clinic with maybe some issues around food, I have to really think outside the box, and I think about the chicken and the egg and the nest and everything in between when I want to get things moving forward. And sometimes, like say with the zinc issue, we need to just go in and give them something to support their body to
Mhm.
replenish those levels. Because if you can't enjoy your food, well, it's all very well coming out with this detailed plan. Week one, eat this, week one, eat two. But if someone's only eating beige foods, you're just going to get stuck in a rut. So I kind of have to be a bit of a detective. I think about things from all different angles because ultimately, if it doesn't matter if you have autism or nothing, or some other difficulty, if we're not eating and drinking what we need to keep our body and our mind healthy, we are just going to get ourselves into a sort of state of um, chronic health issues and just not being healthy. So there's being not diseased, right? So not having a condition, but there's also this idea of like being healthy. So we want to help everyone, including those with autism, to access food and drink that helps them to be well. So it's very, very quick view
Yes,
of the
yeah.
whole thing. Everyone's very different. And so when I see someone, from maybe someone who has little or no words to someone who is able to, an adult who's functioning in kind of the workplace and able, but it just finds himself really stuck around food and drink. I look at each case individually, and I definitely don't sort of write anyone off that say, well, because you have autism, that means, you're going to need supplements or not need supplements, that you have to have a prescription diet or not. Each person I take individually. And I also ask those questions about everything that's going on neck down. Like I'm not just thinking about, well, how are you presenting on my little list of
Mm-hmm.
autism tech tick
Mm-hmm.
boxes? I think about like the whole system, like
Mm-hmm.
you said.
Yeah. I suppose what I'm thinking about is you touched on there that if you're in pain, to use your
Yes.
example, if someone at school is in pain, and that you mentioned it, that affecting how they can then learn and their
Yeah.
friendships and how they feel in their own body,
Mm.
we can understand how that would affect mental health,
Yes.
sense of self-worth, if friendships aren't going so
Mm.
well, or learning is a little bit more difficult. Is it is it further compounded, you're the expert here,
Yeah.
if we are deficient in certain nutrients and
Mm.
minerals? Would that further compound the mental health side of things?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, when you're in pain, that is like something we'd said fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
situation, right? So people's heart race, they feel clammy, and being in that state, it's like revving your engine. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
your body's using more nutrients. It's depleting you further because keeping in that state is energy like draining. So people that are, in a reactive state, they're reacting to food and drink. They are wanting to get help for their pain. Maybe they don't understand they're lashing out. They're not sure how to feel better. They can't communicate their needs. They're generally in a kind of a state that is really difficult to get out as long as you keep exposing that same trigger, be it
Mm-hmm.
the food. And the food's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sort of have that blanket approach that, oh, you've got autism, well, let's get you on a gluten-free diet. Each person needs their own sort of picture. So that you've got a body that's in pain, it's in a fight or flight state, and going along with that is probably a state of inflammation, including neuroinflammation. Yeah, because you've got this thing, your body is connected
Mm-hmm.
to your mind. There's no kind of way to say, well, this bit's inflamed, but my brain is fine, it's like in a bubble,
Yeah.
right? No, sadly not. Your brain is going to be affected by that state. So when we think about like approaches that we can help, we want to think about diet, we want to think about removing things that are driving that reaction every meal that they get. And also, what can we do to help calm things down, be it through our amazing food and nutrition, but also through things that can help regulate the sympathetic nervous. So deep breathing, and also the therapeutic approaches, which can really help people to get in touch with things that help them to get into that calm, rest, and digest state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all the time thinking about all those different parts that are required to make us function well. Yeah, and if you miss one out, it can be difficult to get into that healing journey. Yeah, you're kind of in that loop. So, do you feel like I've kind of answered your
I
question
do, I
very
do, I
good?
do. And I think what we're talking about here is the digestion in the traditional sense
Yes.
of the word, but also emotional digestion.
Yes.
And that's what we aim to do here at
Yeah.
Integratis is think about both processing our food,
Mm.
but also processing the things that we experience through our
Yeah.
emotional lives. So that's Liz's expert insight on autism,
Yeah.
and digestion, but or food sensitivities,
Yeah.
just for anyone really. So if you would like to ask us some more questions, and
Yeah.
hear about how Liz could support you, or someone that you love, who might be experiencing some difficulties around food sensitivities, from a sensory point of view and digestion, then get in
Yeah.
touch and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
All right.